Now it's becoming a trend now of other countries invading other countries. And this happened also in the Old Testament as the story of the kingdom of Israel at the time of David and Solomon. And after the rulership of the kings of Israel, and it became into a divided nation, then we come to the 70 years of Babylonian captivity. We look at the Babylonian captivity as something that their enemies did to Israel. The conquest of Babylon into Israel. But is it the fault of the king of Babylon, or this is Yahweh's will for Israel because of their failures? Now let's start with 36 BC, the 59th Jubilee from the fall of Adam and Eve from paradise. That is 59 times 50 years. When Solomon became king for 39 years after his father died. So 1036 we have the first Jubilee after 7 years in 1029 BC. And with Solomon as king, they celebrated the Jubilee. The second Jubilee was 7 years later on 1022 BC. Third Jubilee in 1015 BC, they celebrate. Fourth Jubilee in 1008 BC, they celebrate. And at 1003 BC, it's the dedication of the temple. Exactly 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus. Now here comes the sad part. On the 5th Jubilee on 1001 BC, they failed to celebrate. And after how many years? 4 years later, it's the death of Solomon after the 39 years of rule. And we know that when Solomon started to rule, he made a lot of mistakes in his life, especially in marrying the different women of other kingdom from his neighboring countries. Like he married an Egyptian princess, or the Queen of Sheba, like that. So after the death of Solomon, they failed on 1001 BC, that is 4 years before the death of Solomon. Then on the 6th Jubilee, 994 BC, they failed to celebrate again the Jubilee, a total of 2. Then in 887 BC, they again failed to celebrate. So when it came to 986 BC, they celebrated the Jubilee. So it became a pattern that since then, only during the 50th year that they celebrate the Jubilee, especially after the death of Solomon. So this is the start of the counting of the 70 years of failure of Israel to celebrate the Jubilee. That's why they came to 70 years of Babylonian captivity. So let's look at the next years after this. So on the starting 986 BC, on the 60th Jubilee, they did not celebrate the 7 Jubilees in between, but only the 8th Jubilee is when they celebrated. So we have in 200 years, we have 4 Jubilees. So only the 7th Jubilee was celebrated, and they missed 28 years. So they up to the 60th Jubilee, they missed 3 plus 28. 4 times 7, 28. So that's a total of 31 years of failed rest for them. You see, on the 6th year before the Jubilee, Yahweh gave the Israelites a double portion of their harvest. Then on the 7th year, Yahweh required them to stop working and rest for 1 year. The purpose here is to give the land a rest, and the people rest from their work. So on 786 BC, September 15, it's the 9th Grand Jubilee when Jehu was as king. And then comes the 200 years after this. Only 3 Jubilees were celebrated because the 50th, the 200th year, is the start of the Babylonian Captivity. So no Jubilee was celebrated during the captivity, the start of their march toward Babylon. So they missed 29 years. So the total number of years that they failed to celebrate is 60 years. So during the Babylonian captivity, that is 50 years, no Jubilee was celebrated. So they miss 8 years of all, and it brings to total of 68 years of failure to celebrate or to give rest to the people. They continued working, especially during the Babylonian captivity, wherein they were made as slaves in Babylon. But the only thing is, whenever the Jews were outside Israel, they excel. So instead of being slaves, they master the life in Babylon, and they kind of like it, especially after the fall of Babylon. The Medo-Persian are more better master than the Babylonians. So on 536 BC, 69th Jubilee, on the 68th year, on the 537 BC, the new king of Medo-Persian wanted to give them the free decision to go home to Israel, but they stayed. Instead of going home, they stayed. And this is the time that Daniel learned that the captivity they still need to wait 2 more 7 years. That is 14 years. Because how many years are they now in Babylon? 50 years. So they still need to do 20 more years in Babylon. That's when Daniel learned the captivity will end in 20 more years. And with their being a good relationship with their Medo-Persian rulers, plans were made for the temple construction actually. So since they made a decision not to go home, the king of Medo-Persian gave them permit to plan for their temple construction. On 536 BC, the 69th Jubilee year, Daniel learned when captivity will end, and plans were made for temple construction. On 535 BC, on the 2nd month, the temple foundation was laid. Then 7 years later, on 529 BC, it's the first Jubilee year, and still no Jubilee was celebrated, and they missed 1 year for a total of 69 years. So on 528 BC, Cyrus died, and they stopped the temple construction. So 7 years later, on 522 BC, on the 2nd Jubilee year, still no Jubilee was celebrated, and Darius I was the king of Medo-Persian. and it's the 70th Jubilee failure. So this is the time that Daniel learned that this is the time for the end of their Babylonian captivity. So on 520 BC, it's the building of the temple resumed on the second term of Darius. So on 516 BC, on Adar 3 or Adar 2, whatever is that, consecration of the temple, and it's the end of the Babylonian exile, and the land had rest, 70 years of rest, because the people are in Babylon. So actually, what Yahweh did is he put the inhabitants of the land to Babylon, so the people can let the land of Israel to rest for 70 years because of their failure. And this is a scientific study that they found, that when you let the land to rest on the 7th year, then it will produce more fruit instead of being exhausted of all the minerals in the ground. So on 515 BC, after the end of Babylonian captivity, 1 year later, on the 3rd Jubilee year, the Jubilee was celebrated, and it's the dedication of the temple. Imagine that. At the end of the Babylonian captivity on 515 BC, it's the dedication of the temple. So on 515 BC, 3rd Jubilee year, the Jubilee was celebrated, and it's the dedication of the temple on the 3rd Jubilee year. So for the next 35 years, on 486 BC, it's the 70th Jubilee year, and 6 Jubilees were celebrated because of that. This is the 70th year, or 3,500 years after the fall from paradise on 3986 BC. That's the fall of Adam and Eve from paradise. 70th Jubilee, 3,500 years. So after Israel endured 70 years of Babylonian captivity, on 515 BC, 3rd Jubilee was the dedication of the temple. On 486 September 11, 70th Jubilee, it's the temple worship at its peak period, because it's the 70th Jubilee. When it comes to number 70, that's a divine number. On 486 BC, September 11 also, it's the 69 times 7 years before the birth of Jesus. So this 70 years, first 70 years, Yahweh had given the Israelites 2 times 70 years, for a total of 140 years, twice the 70 years of captivity. That's why 70 years later, after 515 BC, on 445 BC, it's the Edict of Artaxerxes, that was given to Nehemiah to rebuild the temple walls and gates. And after the rebuilding of the temple and gates, after 40 years, on July 25, 405 BC, on the 8th 402-year cycle, it's the birth of Malachi. Malachi is like a Jesus type of prophet, because his ministry lasted 30 years. So on September 13, 386 BC, on the 72nd Jubilee On the ninth Grand Jubilee, it's the start of Malachi ministry. And for 30 years, after 30 years later, 14 days, that was his ministry days, against the established religion. You see, that's the problem with Israelites nation. When religion started to rise up, then there's more chances that they overshoot what they are trying to build. So on the next 30 years, on 375 years BC, May 7, it's the end of Malachi ministry at age 30, or 2 times 777 Sabbath. So after the end of Malachi, you have 400 years of silence. So if you open your Bible, you see the last page before the gospel. It's the gospel of the writings of Malachi. Then you have like a period of 400 years before the coming of John the Baptist. On the year 375 plus 425, about 26 AD or 26 AD. That's when John the Baptist started baptizing in the Jordan River, which ended the 400 years of silence of Yahweh. So from May 7, 375 BC, it's the end of Malachi ministry during the day of Sabbath. Was he being martyred? With the rising of religion, then here comes the Sadducees, Pharisees, and all the cis type of religion. Religion will take over, and they think it's the glory of the Israelite nation because they have the temple. They have this connection or the union between church and state. So 2425 times 777 times 7 days. I don't know if that's times 7 days, if that is correct, but I'm going to check it later. On August 17, 3 BC, Saturday, that's 24 days before the birth of Jesus. So it's like a period of 372 years from Malachi to the birth of Jesus. So May 7, 375 was the end of Malachi ministry on the day of Sabbath. So for 400 years we have silence, or it's the time of when Yahweh winked at. It's a figure of speech, meaning Yahweh closed his eyes to what's happening in Israel. He did not send any prophet, he did not send anything, no word from Yahweh, but religion took over. So when there's no prophet, religion takes over. So on May 7, 26 AD, Wednesday, it's the start of John ministry. Exactly 400 years of silence. So for 40 weeks plus 2 days, on February 13, 27 AD, Thursday, it's the baptism of Jesus. So after 280 days, or 40 weeks. Then after the baptism of Jesus, after 14 weeks later, on May 27 AD, Saturday, John was arrested. John's ministry was also 55 weeks. Then for 18 weeks later, plus 5 days on October 5, 27 AD, it's the Sunday, it's the birthday of Herod. And on this day, it's the dance of 7 veils by Salome to Herod. And it was this dance of 7 veils was done in accordance to Babylonian tradition about the visit of what that started to hell, and there were 7 gates to hell, and on its gates there stands an evil spirit, and Salome need to remove one of her veil to all these 7 guards in hell. So at the end, he was naked when he met his lover, Nimrod. You know. So on the next day, on October 6, 27 AD, on the 17th day of the second month, it's the memorial of the Great Flood. So that's the death of John the Baptist. So March 18, 3 BC, it's the birth of John the Baptist. And his timeline is 2 times 771 times 7 days. And he died on October 6, 27 AD. It's the death of John the Baptist at the memorial of the Great Flood. So we know that after the death of John the Baptist, Jesus knew that he got only 6 months to live, because John the Baptist was 6 months older than Jesus. The only difference is that after the death of John the Baptist, Jesus' ministry actually is 2 times 773 Sabbath. So he got 2 more weeks longer than John the Baptist, because when Jesus Christ died, it was a pregnant year, or that means other 2 was added. So we're going to study the 402-year cycle, or 27 times 777 Sabbath. On May 7, 375 BC, it's the end of Malachi ministry on the day of Sabbath. So for 27 times 777 times 7 days, that's an extra one. On May 29, 28 AD, Saturday, it's 12 days before the ascent of Jesus. So 777 times 7 is like a yardstick in the Bible, just like this one. 12 days before the ascent of Jesus to heaven, and May 7, 375, that's the end of Malachi ministry. So this the moon at the death of John the Baptist, and you can see it's Monday, October 6, 27 AD when he died, and the phase of the moon is 16.5 at 7 o'clock in the morning when he died. So this is the son of the death of John the Baptist, and the date is 27 AD, October 6. It's the memorial of the Great Flood, and you can see the feet of Virgo where the sun is, and at the bottom of your screen below the horizon is the constellation Libra, which represent the second month after Virgo, which was the reckoning of the year at the time of Noah. And the Julian date is 1731 197. So at the time of Jesus' crucifixion on April 28, 28 AD, the day of the week is Wednesday, and the sun is at Taurus. Why? Because at the time of Jesus' death, other 2 was added, which moves the sun late So it's not on the constellation Aries anymore, but it's already at constellation Taurus. And the Julian date is 1731-403. So from October 6, 27 AD, Julian date 1731-197, it's the death of John the Baptist. And on Jesus' death on April 28, 28 AD, Julian date 1731-403, the space in between is 206 days, or equivalent to 6.98 moons, because we must remember that Jesus Christ died on the 14th of Nisan, while John the Baptist on the 17th day of the moon. So that's the difference between the two.